Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. In this video, I'm going to refute Muhammad Hijabi. He made a video just uploaded recently, probably be an hour or two or so ago. And the video is about Bill Maher's interview with Mike Tyson. Now, in this response, you're going to see Muhammad Hijabi does what we call taqiyya, lying in order to protect the dignity of Islam in front of his Western audience. And of course, those Muslims who have become deviant in their hearts. Now, I know some Muslims will say, it's not taqiyya, he just has a difference of opinion. Now, I know Muhammad Hijabi's stance on apostasy. He doesn't believe that apostates should be killed. And of course, you need to understand that Muhammad Hijabi lives in the West. He wouldn't want to be labeled as a hate preacher. He's famous. He'd be ridiculed. He'll be declared as a hate preacher. The Westerners will actually come after him because he's popular on YouTube. Obviously, he wouldn't want his networks closed. He wouldn't want to end up like Anjem Choudary and end up in jail. So these people will conceal. They know the truth. They know that apostates get killed in Islam. But they'll always say, oh, no, it's just a different interpretation. Oh, no, we believe in freedoms. We don't believe in this sort of hostility and things like that. And so they'll conceal it based on the environment and the condition they're living in. So we can understand why Hijabi and certain apologists like him will hold that sort of position. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go into that argument. We're going to respond to that. And in the comment section, I'm going to respond to those who claim, oh, it's just a difference of opinion. So let's listen to this particular statement. Now, I didn't watch the whole video. I'm not intending to watch the whole video. It's about 8 minutes long. But I'm going to focus on just this one point. So let's listen to what he says.
To how you guys do it. Today, I'm going to be reacting to a particular segment that I've seen from Bill Maher and Mike Tyson.
And you're a Muslim?
Yeah.
Is the whole family Muslim?
Some of my kids, but listen, it's my wife and my kids, they have to choose what they want to be.
Right.
They have to choose.
And you're okay with that?
Absolutely.
That is not a point of view that is even allowed in many, many Muslim countries in the world.
So here, Mike Tyson makes a deviant, because Mike Tyson lives in the West too, yeah? So he's into that. He's fooled by the West, We can choose whatever we want. We can choose homosexuality. We have the freedom to choose atheist. If I'm a Christian, I can choose to be an atheist. So Muslims who live in the West have been fooled into this notion of freedom as well, right? And this is a plot against the Muslims, right? And Mike Tyson is affected by this. So Mike Tyson says, my kids can choose, their religion. And so Bill Maher says in response, well, that really doesn't happen in Muslim countries. And let's see how Hijabi responds to this.
There is one religion, it is Islam. And
well, I believe
they're not big on like, hey, you know what? Let's agree to disagree.
All right, but listen, I'm not Allah.
I know, I'm just...
See, look at this guy, Bill Maher. First and foremost, he's saying it's not allowed in Muslim countries. There's layers of problems here. What is a Muslim country exactly? Is it a country with a majority Muslim population? Let's just say that is the case, no problem. Let's go with that. Now, is what happens in a Muslim country representative of what Islam says? No, it's not. Okay, so it's not really a good argument. Number 3, on this point, actually there's many verses in the Quran which very clearly tell us that prophets had their own sons disagreed with them, their own wives disagreed with them, betrayed them, went against them, didn't believe in what they believed. Noah, for example, is depicted in the Quran as having his son disbelieve or that his son disbelieved and that he went against him. He didn't force him to become a submitter to one God. Lot as well, his wife disbelieved and so on. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself, his uncle Abu Talib, did not believe in the message of Islam. And then Allah in the Quran says, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. That you don't guide who you want, but Allah guides whomever He wants. So لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينُ, or the idea that He just negated, to you your religion and to us ours, is exactly a verse in the Quran. It's not necessarily as he says it.
Women who don't want to.
Okay, so clearly, again, this is a deception by Muhammad Hijabi. He says, he quotes prophets of the past. So he starts by saying, for example, that, so interestingly, he mentions that some of the prophets and even the wives went against the prophets. So the prophets' sons and some of their wives went against. And I think he's referring to Adam alayhi salam, where his son, Nuh alayhi salam, where his son becomes a non-Muslim. But what he doesn't tell you is, what did Allah do with the son of Nuh alayhi salam? He drowned him. He drowned that apostate in the ocean, right? So it's like, oh, we can use this part where Nuh alayhi salam chooses to be an apostate, but what does Allah do? Allah destroys him then and there, kills him, right? And then he mentions Lut. He's like, Lut's wife. Look at Lut's wife. Lut's wife, she chose to follow the homosexuals, or those who accept those desires. And what did Allah do? Allah punished her straight away, destroyed her. You know what I mean? That was that form of apostasy, that punishment, right? But why doesn't Hijabi mention that part? If Allah was happy with, or if Allah was happy with their decision, why would Allah kill them? Right? Why would He punish them? Allah sent the angels straight away and destroyed Lut's family. His wife in particular, and the homosexuals. And then he uses the argument, to you be your religion and to me my religion. Modernists use this particular verse to say, hey, look, we can choose our own religion. But that's not what that verse is saying. That verse was implemented because some of the idolaters came to the Prophet Muhammad and said, what did he say? To worship our gods 1 year, and then the following year we'll worship your gods. And the Prophet said, to you be your religion and to me my religion. Meaning, you won't accept my faith and I won't accept your faith. But this doesn't mean that other verses don't come into play, because you can't just quote a single verse in isolation. You need to use the other verses where the Prophet ﷺ was instructed to fight those unbelievers, like in Surah 9 and so forth, where it says, fight them until there is no more kufr left, no more idolization left. So how do you even explain those verses, Hijabi? Fight them until there is no disbelief left. So obviously the Prophet wasn't commanded to fight straight away, because the Prophet ﷺ wasn't ready to fight and spread his religion by the sword. He wasn't ready. So the particular verses were sent at particular time. When he had his forces and he was ready to fight, the Prophet ﷺ didn't come back to the Kaaba and say, to be your religion is your religion and my religion is mine. No, he broke those idols. He smashed those idols. And he cleared out all the idols, not just in the Kaaba. He cleared out all the idols in the Arabian Peninsula. There are many hadiths where the Prophet ﷺ, even when they took over the Kaaba and took over Arabia, he sent expeditions to certain tribes in different areas. And when he found out that in that house they had an idol, they would even smash the idols, even outside the Kaaba. So he wanted to purify not just the house, but he purified the whole Arabian Peninsula for the Muslims. right? So this notion, oh, to be your religion, why are you misquoting Islam to appease the West? And folks, this is why I listen to Brother Daniel Hakikato more than I listen to people like Hijabi and so forth. Hijabi twists the verse of Islam to make it accommodating to please the West. For example, Hijabi preaches that no, it's okay to choose your own religion because there were prophets who had sons or who were unbelievers. Response: this is clearly wrong. Just because, again, a certain prophet had an unbeliever family member is not evidence that a family member has a right to choose his own faith. For example, and I'm going to mention these hadiths below, and I'm going to show you even what the scholars have said. For example, in a hadith, it says that if your child refuses salah when they reach puberty, then you should smack them. In fact, there are even apostasy laws that are punishable in Islamic law. Listen, this is why I say to Muslims, listen to Brother Daniel, and he teaches you methods on how to counter these arguments. Western nations force Muslims to accept LGBTIQ rights, and they send warplanes to those Muslim nations if they don't accept secular moral values. That's the West forcing their morals on Muslim nations. They also force Muslims women in France to remove the burqa. Isn't that West forcing its moral beliefs and culture on Muslims? So we ask, why are we so apologetic about Islam being forced upon idolaters, or those who refuse to pay the jizya, or those who are deviant? And let's see what one comment says, and I'm going to respond to that, inshallah. The comment says by Dino Palvara. He says, this is defending Muhammad Hijabi. He says, he's literally stating facts that there is in Islam. He says you can disagree with it and have a different opinion. By the way, I'm not sure if even this person is a Muslim, right? Listen, again, it could be a conspirator. It's causing division amongst the Muslims. So again, he says he's literally stating facts that are in Islam. Facts that are in Islam. He says you can disagree with it and have a difference of opinion. But your opinion and Daniel's opinion is not the only opinion. He says, and it is not the opinion one is obliged to follow. And also, what you're saying isn't exactly in contradiction with hijab is saying either. You're just looking for stuff to disagree with instead of going out there and doing dawah. You're here criticizing someone for having a valid opinion. Listen, the fact is in Islam there's differences of opinion regarding certain matters, and you cannot shove down someone's throat your exact opinion on every matter in Islam, and he gets 2 likes for it. Okay, so a brother quoted Zigzag. I think he said, Quran 385, no other religion is accepted aside from Islam, refer to the Quran. So here's my response. Answering that it's your difference of opinion. It's just a difference of opinion, agreement, okay? Unfortunately, there are modernist Muslims out there that whenever you show them evidences, they will generally say to counter this, well, we have differences of opinion. When Muslims do this, they think that they are helping Islam. But what they are doing is causing more damage. Because when we keep saying there is a difference of opinion, then the West look at this din that you're trying to protect, and they say, well, Islam has no answer. All it has is confusion and laws that are not agreed upon. So basically, this religion has been turned into an artificial religion. It's useless and meaningless, since everyone's opinion becomes equally wrong and equally valid. For the outsider, this creates confusion, and not only that, Islamic critics make a mockery saying, Allah is so confused. He says his book is clear, but when you look, every Muslim has a different opinion. Therefore, the Quran and Islam are just as confusing as the doctrine of the Trinity. You have the Bible saying one thing, and then Christians, depending on what methodology you speak, have a different view on who Jesus is, interpreting the same book. Some say he's God, others say he's just a prophet, others say he's just a son, others say he's both son and both God. And so people look at Christianity as a confusing religion. Wallahi, the same is now happening to Islam. The enemies of Islam and those who have deviance have created so many problems. Some out of hatred have created differences, and others, like Muhammad Hijabi, since they're living in the West, have distorted Islam to make it more accommodating, but in the process are causing more damage than good. This is why a critic of Islam will say, Muslims make taqiyya, cover up the teaching of Islam. I remember debating an atheist once, and I would show him the meaning of one particular verse. And to counter this, he would tell me, well, there is a difference of opinion, and so the argument becomes lost because we no longer can get to the truth. Again, his opinion is just as valid as my opinion, because apparently Islam caters for that. This is the confusion I'm talking about when we entertain the idea that all opinions are valid, or entertained the idea all opinions can be equally correct. Because the atheist says, well, if your point of view of the Quran is valid, then so is mine. See the trap we have fallen into, Muslims. See the damage we have caused. Again, I'm not saying that there is no grey areas or areas where opinions can change or some opinions can differ. Yes, of course, we can have differences of opinion on some fiqh issues, like where to place your hands during salah. But that said, Muslims and those with deviances in their hearts take these minor examples of differences, then try to apply it to more fundamentals, like the punishment for hudud, like punishing apostates, or even things like wearing the hijab. There are Muslims now who even entertain the idea that the woman's hijab, as in the covering of her hair, is also just based on a difference of opinion. Do you see what I'm getting at, folks? When you open the can of worms, you can no longer stop it. Then everything in your din becomes his or her opinion. And so Islam now just becomes a religion based on someone's opinion. Is this the Islam we want to preach? For Muslims to stop turning this religion into mockery and being an artificial religion, we must remove the notion that everyone's opinion is valid. And we need to learn to agree to disagree. Don't forget that the Christian faith allowed all ideas to be valid and equally entertained. They allowed people to choose their religion, and now they are suffering from so many apostasies that Christianity has gone into now decline. They're predicting within the next 50 years that it's basically going to lose something like 20 or 30% of their members. There's a reason why this is happening. There are atheist think tanks at this very moment where they want to even punish Muslim parents for forcing their children to be indoctrinated by Islam. Soon, they will make it law that we cannot talk to our kids about Islam, and it is basically child abuse to raise them in Islam, and we can only do this or preach to them Islam only if they reach an age of 18 or maturity. This is all designed to slow Islam and create apostasy. And Muslims are now following this tragedy that is imposed by the West. Atheists removed the Bible from Congress laws, government laws. They said religion has no involvement in politics. By the way, isn't this secular liberalism forcing their moral values and their laws upon society? Religion has to be separate. This has caused many Christians to become immoral and accept all the fahisha in their society as an equally valid living standard compared to the Bible. This then has caused many Christians to get perverted. They are now forced to accept LGBTIQ rights, such as other things such as brothels, legalized abortions, nightclubs, things like that. And now they are crying and seeing how their society has shifted and become godless. And that's exactly the aim of the West with Islam. Their ideas are to bring the same liberal values and allow Muslims to be able to choose their own religion without any penalties. Yes, 15-year-old Ahmed should be allowed to choose to become a Buddhist or a Hindu or an atheist. He should be able to have the freedom to read Richard Dawkins' books. By the way, I've had a close relative of mine who brought her own 15-year-old son a Richard Dawkins book called The God Delusion. She later called me a few weeks ago telling me and getting worried her son has become an ex-Muslim. The irony, hey? Freedom of religion. Is this the freedom we want to preach? Can I ask Muslims, if the West is so free with their ideas, why do they ban anyone reading ISIS materials online? Why did they ban ISIS magazines when ISIS was around in Iraq and Syria? Any Westerner or Muslim living in the West caught reading ISIS magazines was a terrorist sympathizer, and you're being prosecuted and put in prison. You're watched by ASIO officials online. Well, they did this because they do not wish anyone to be indoctrinated and become radicalized. After all, this harms the West. So that's their argument. So let me ask you this, Muslims. When we preach that one can choose his faith and one should be able to read any book and we place no restrictions, how will you answer Allah when so and so becomes an ex-Muslim? Because you gave them such freedoms. Is this not hurting himself and causing him to go to Jahannam, like an ISIS suicide bomber hurts the West? If a Muslim government allowed pornography and millions of Muslim youths had access to this because we wanted to believe in freedoms, will you as a Muslim not hold the government responsible on the day of judgment for allowing this fahisha? So I ask, why is it any different when a Muslim parent turns around and says, you can read any material you want, you can choose whatever religion you want, and you start supporting them in these ideas and planting that seed of, you should be able to go and read and you should be able to go and watch whatever you want. But then we stop those same Muslim parents and we tell them that they are being bad parents if that child is found reading an ISIS magazine. Wallahi, there is no difference between an ISIS magazine that calls to kill infidels in marketplaces and put on a suicide vest and bomb people indiscriminately, men, women and children, because this is a perverted idea. There is no difference between that and giving your child a book of Richard Dawkins and that child grows up to become an atheist and he burns in hell forever. Wallahi, in fact, it is worse. It is much worse than terrorism. Because what? A terrorist goes out and kills non-Muslims, and sometimes he kills Muslims. But what happens when a Muslim dies as an ex-Muslim? He goes to hell forever. So I ask, which is worse? So yes, in Islam we must force our religion, just as the West forces its secular liberal values to misguide and take over Islamic cultures and beliefs. Again, I'm not saying that we force our religion on a Christian or a Jew. There's an exception for these. Islam makes an exception. If they pay the jizya and so forth, they can keep their religion, but they can't promote their religion in a Muslim country, things like that. Yes, we understand there's these sorts of legitimacies. But the consensus view is that, yes, Islam is defensive, but it's also offensive. If a nation is hostile and that nation is, for instance, suppose, let me just give you an example, Muslims. Suppose we did not have online information. We didn't have mass printing companies. And suppose there was a nation and the government was a tyrant ruler in the sense that it did not allow religion to come to that country. It did not allow Islam to come to that country. And we know in the past that happened. Muslims didn't have a printing company. Muslims didn't have online Google. We can send a non-Muslim in a different country who has been refused Islam. We can't send him a link to say, here you go, read the Quran, Islam has reached you. No, back in those times, that basically didn't happen. That's why there was a lot more advancement in spreading Islam by the sword. And so what happened is, you will see many of the khilafahs and so forth, many of the sultans, they would go and conquer another country because they would send them a letter, and then the king would reject that letter and say, the letter will say, accept Islam for your salvation and so forth, and, to convert them, right? And they would reject that. And so the Muslims would get the armies ready to go there and force that king to comply. So then the religion of Islam can spread amongst those people. So those people can get the hidayah, receive the hidayah. Because we want them to access salvation. Suppose they worship idols and statues and things like that. Islam has to come to them. We need to bring Islam to them, to bring them back to the Abrahamic faith. And the West does this with Muslim countries. So yes, in Islam we must force our religion, just as the West forces its secular liberal values to misguide and take over Islamic cultures and beliefs. We fight them with equal measure. Don't ever get sucked into the idea that you need to live up to freedom values. That's all a lie. They preach they believe in freedom, but deep down there is no freedom. But them imposing their values upon us. Look at Afghanistan, for example, how they sent NGOs to remove Sharia. They bombed and killed millions in Iraq to give those people LGBTI, nightclubs, shisha, women to dress the way they like in society. Yes, see my video about this on my channel. Just recently I posted about Iraq, I think 2 or 3 videos ago. If you don't stand for anything, you don't stand for nothing. This was actually quoted by an Orthodox Christian. The last stance of the unbelievers is to turn their faith into Christianity. And they are pretty much almost there, especially with Muslims living in the West. The Messenger of Allah spoke about this. It's called the lizard's hole. Let me now leave you with this. These are the views of Sunni scholars on the subject of those who intentionally miss their obligatory prayers. Have a listen to this. Imam Malik rahmatullah said, and Imam Shafi rahmatullah said, it is lawful, listen, it is lawful to kill the person who misses his salah, even though the person does not become a kafir. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah said, is of the view that the person will not be killed, nor will his actions constitute kufr. Rather, he ought to be sent to jail until he starts reading salah. Now, a Muslim might be saying, oh, look, here we go. There's a difference of opinion, even among your scholars. But this is the reality. From the above, you can see, although they have disagreements on the level of punishment, What they certainly don't agree is on freedom not to pray salah. You see the difference? In fact, in an authentic hadith in Abu Dawud 459 and Ahmed 6650, narrated from Amr ibn Shu'aib from his father and his grandfather, said, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, teach your children to pray when they are 7 years old, and smack them lightly if they do not pray when they are 10 years old, and separate them in their beds. Classified Al-Sahih by Albani. See, folks, this is our religion, and don't let others fool you about difference of opinion. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, don't be ashamed of this. Wallahi, no Westerner would object if a father or a mother spank their child lightly on the bum if they're refusing to go and get education. None of them. They'd say, no, parent can discipline them. But soon as the parent disciplines them to pray to Allah and be thankful to Allah, oh, how oppressive, oh, how radical, oh, you're being too extreme, brother. So when it comes to worldly matters, smacking the child is justifiable because they're not praying. And by the way, we're talking about 10 years old. But smacking them, to go to school, that's completely justified. But smacking them to pray to Allah, this is unjustified. Again, look at the level of hypocrisy of the West. And mostly look at the hypocrisy of some of these modern Muslims. Wallahi, they will not object, right? They won't say, oh, there's a difference of opinion. Oh, no, they'll say, yeah, you wanna lightly punish your child because they're rejecting to go to school? No, we need to show them that, we need to discipline them. We need to ground them. We need to at least ground them. If you disagree, if they're disagreeing with smacking, honestly, they will not disagree with grounding. They will never object and say, oh, if you ground them, put them in their room, take their iPhones away from them, put them in their room, and they're punished in there. They can't leave their room for about 2-3 hours, or they have to miss dinner. Well, they won't object. They'll say, yep, this is reasonable punishment, reasonable, and a father or a mother should be able to have some sort of disciplinary measures in order for them to go to school. But wallahi, if they hear, you punish them, you put them in their room for 2 years, or they had to skip dinner because they didn't pray to Allah, oh, you brother, you're very radical, brother, very extreme. And this goes to show, wallahi, that these people care more about the dunya than the akhirah. The disease of materialism, wallahi, they've made materialism, education, Western education, their ilah, their God, their values to success. That's why most of them, wallahi, they indulge in even riba, interest. Oh, brother, I need to buy a house because I can't afford to buy a house unless I get, interest from the bank. And you find that when they buy one house, it's not enough. Wallahi, they buy another one for interest. Or another. Hang on, brother, you said that, without a house, you weren't going to have a roof. You said, oh, I'm only going to do it once. And you find them doing it again and again and again. So it's just an excuse. So just to conclude, let's not fall for their traps. The secular games, the liberal games, and these westernized Muslims who are just making a mockery of Islam, who do not stand to the truth, to the haqq. And it's just, it is really, really embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing. And they are doing anything in their will and power to wash down the religion, to make it accommodating to the West. Honestly, I as a Muslim, I want genuine people. And as a result, the people who accept Muhammad Hijabi's dawah, wallahi, you look at these people who are accepting the deen through Muhammad Hijabi and all that, you'll realize that most of them have got feminist views, liberal views, because what Muhammad Hijabi taught them is that Islam can accommodate feminism. Islam can accommodate liberal values and democratic values. And you find that these Muslims are not solid Muslims. They're not orthodox Muslims. They're not conservative Muslims, right? They're the Adam Din version. Have you seen Adam Din? Right? Muhammad Hijabi's dawah are the ones that create people like Majid Nawaz. In fact, Majid Nawaz and Muhammad Hijabi will actually agree in their interpretation of Islam. You know, freedom for all, freedom of religion.